What is going on, everybody? Voidlego here, back for a brand new episode of Chaos Head Noah. Last time we were on, Takumi found a mysterious chain while walking across Scramble Crossing, in which he followed it to a familiar-looking girl of Senna. And Senna begins to explain Takumi about all of her discoveries about how the world really works, or how there is a faction at play here distorting reality. She points out that an invention was recently patent in America that is a device that's able to show images onto somebody's orbital nerves, aka their eyes, and she makes the case of if some faction is able to do that, how can the viewer discern that it is fake, that it is false? How can they discern what is real and not real, what is reality and what is fictional images just being transmitted to them via these devices or whatnot? At first, Takumi doesn't believe her, but once he gets home and decides to look it up with his friend, he discovers that it is an actual permit has been patented, not permit, patent has been trademarked in America. So the technology is indeed real. After which, he gets an email from Yua asking him to meet up with her, but of course, he does not trust her at all, so he decides to hide out in Ad Cafe, which was a dumb decision because, of course, Yua knows only two locations Takumi would be at, and Yua tries to help him in her own special way by holding him down in the little cafe space and trying to help him. It's because she's obviously dealing with the same problems that she thinks Takumi has as well. She has some sort of dissonant multi-personality, or DBD, if I remember correctly, something like that. She Yua has something. She obviously has a bit delusional herself, just like Takumi. So Takumi, of course, runs away and screams his head off, and he basically runs around all of Shibuya while also getting chased by some detectives who turn out to be some Rockies that Ban assigned to look after Takumi. But after meeting up with Fez, who is also being investigated by the same investigators ever since Takumi talked to Ban and such, they've finally come to this tunnel, and Fez is finally trying to describe to Takumi what a DI sword really is, and how the flimsy sword Ban bought, I mean, not Ban, but Takumi bought, was actually a fake. Meanwhile, Ben and his partner are investigating the crucifixion crime scene, and Ben pulls out a quarter and it starts spinning around in like a kind of magnetized way, with Ben ending the scene with saying like, "What do you think so many youths come to Shibuya?" And now we're here with two copies of Fess here. So what the hell is going on? We ended on quite a cliffhanger, but it seems like the more, like, I feel like it's pretty obvious by this point, the more delusional you are, you're able to summon these swords. Because you are having these delusions, you're kind of, in some sort of way, bringing them into your own reality. And obviously, the only other people that can see these swords are other people with delusions, such as Takumi, such as Senna, such as Fess as well. I don't think there's been anyone else we've seen summon a sword yet, at least. Probably the rest of the main cast, more likely, because everyone seems to have problems. You know what I mean? But like I feel like that is a central focus point here, is that each one of the characters here have their own personal problems, their own, should I say, mental illness. They have their own problems that, like, each of them view reality in a different lens from each other. Takumi, we've seen the most from him, obviously. We know all the delusions he has. Senna, who probably views the world in a more black and white sort of perspective, since she was talking about a evil organization or evil faction. Maybe she views the world in a black and white sort of sense. I don't know. We haven't hung out with her that much. Fess possibly views the world in a more nihilistic way, since she's part of an emo band. But that's just pure conjecture. We don't have much information about these characters, but probably the more we go into this, the more we will understand their perspective of the world and how they are able to, well, why they are able to summon these swords, what sort of problems from their past are able to manifest this power within them. But I digress. There was a very helpful comment from last episode, basically confirming to me that in this first playthrough, we are locked to one ending. So I can really pick and choose what delusions I want to see or what, because it won't affect anything in this first playthrough, which is nice to know. That is nice to know. So I really don't need to be saving after every single delusion choice, since it won't matter in this first playthrough. Which is nice to know, actually. It's just nice. I'm still going to pick and choose every now and then, just because curiosity's sake and all that. But thank you very much for the helpful information. And yeah, let's just get right into it, shall we? And see what the fuck is going on. So in a way, the conversation I was having with Fess transitioned into something completely unrelated. Whoa. Did this have something to do with the DI swords? If not, then I didn't care. I had to somehow find a way to get Fess to tell me how to get my hands on a real DI sword. So what's special about Shibuya? Both in front of and behind me, the same words were being spoken from the two Fesses at the same time. Perfect synchronization gave me a somewhat strange feeling. Had Fess split in half? Were both of them the real Fess, or were both of them imposters? Really? The City of Muse. Why? Well, that has absolutely nothing to do with me. The two Fesses paused for a moment. Being watched from both in front and from behind started to make me feel uncomfortable. Greater will. This is bad, my rational side warned me. Could this be... Maybe she was trying to recruit me into some sketchy religious cult. Began to feel uneasy. Man, maybe I should just get the heck out of here. But upon hearing the next thing Fess said to me, I realized I no longer had that option. Oh boy. Huh. Meanwhile... Oh shit, here we go, gravity. Brings people together, huh? Ben returned to the main street from the alleyway, and then began walking towards Shibuya Station. Tsuwa, who had now assumed they were going to Shinshin, chased after his senior detective with an obvious frown on his face. Tsuwa grew discouraged in response to Ban's slightly mocking tone.
オカルトじゃねえよ。世界には引力がアンバランス化してる地域ってのが何か所かある。
Yeah?
アンバランス化ですか。グリコが楕円を描いたのもその影響ってこと。G レートって呼ぶらしい。
GE would.
GE レート。正式名称は何だっつってたかな。グルバケーション、グラリッシュ、引力ならグラビテーションじゃないですか。グラビテーションエラーレート。おお、そうそれだ。グラビテーションエラーレート。直訳すると万有引力の異常値ですか。物理学の辞典を調べりゃ載ってるはずだぜ。載ってたっすかね。
The GE rate and balance that contradicts the law of universal gravitation. Discovered by Isaac Newton, the law of universal gravitation is a fundamental force of nature that acts between all forms of energy and matter, i.e. anything that contains mass. It is commonly believed that the great number of strata weared upon the Earth's surface play a large part in this law. A typical example of something that disturbs local areas would be lava beds. This phenomenon can be found at the foot of Mount Fuji, Akorigara, also known as the Sea of Trees, where there have been several recorded instances of compasses becoming unusable. Yeah. Studies have also shown that fossil beds, particularly rich in iron and calcium, are another type of stradium in which magnetism is repelled. Adding on to the previous factors, magnete is also believed to have a particularly strong influence on gravity. If magnete, a naturally occurring magnet within octahedral crystal structure, were to be found beneath the earth in a quantity large enough to warrant being recognized as a dike, it would be as if the ground itself were a magnet. This would then result in an extremely high chance of the area producing minute gravitational deviations. The GE rate is the measurement of the gravitational values in the region in which such values have been distorted by the previously mentioned geological strata. It ain't a good visual novel if there ain't a fucking like couple sentences explaining a scientific phenomenon. It just ain't a good visual novel if it doesn't have that. If it doesn't have it, it's not peak. Every fucking time, you know, be it scientific, philosophical. It has to be a concept that has to be explained in like a couple of sentences. No matter what visual, like if it's a good visual novel, it's gotta have it. It's gotta have it. Goddamn Schrodinger's cat. Anyway, when Ban's explanation concluded, the two men who had been walking the entire time were just exiting onto Dogonzaka. The scenery surrounding them instantly turned bright and dazzling.
渋谷の平均 GE レートは世界でもトップクラスらしいぜ。地面に置いたボールが一人でに坂を登っていくようなケースもあるらしい。マジっすか?
Suwa, who had been listening in the other silence up until now, showed his surprise with a slightly exaggerated tone.
まるで SF 映画の世界っすね。お前の好きなな。自分は小難しいのは嫌いっすよ。壮大なスケールの映画がいいっす。
Yeah, like Star Battlefields?
知らねえよ。先輩の説明はすごくもっともらしいっすけど、なかなか信じられないっすよ。GE レートなんて聞いたこともないっすし。
Yeah, I don't think I've heard of a GE rate either.
てめえの無知を一般論として語るな。デカに必要なのは事実を客観視することだぞ。はあ、でも。
What Sewell said was equally true. The research into the GE rate was minimal, and so it was not something that would be taught to everyday college students. Yeah. Dan himself had not even been aware of it until a few weeks ago.
そもそもまだ肝心の答えを聞いてないっすよ。渋谷の重力がアンバランスだとなんで若者が引きつけられるんですか？
Is it the JoJo explanation of gravity, where gravity is what allows people to meet each other?
引力と人間ってのは意外と因果関係があるってことだよ。
Oh.
お前、生き物のバイオリズムは月の引力に関係してるっての知ってたか？潮の満ち引きだけじゃねえんだぜ。
ウミガメの産卵には月の影響があるらしいってのはどっかで耳にしたことがあるっす。
ああ、必ず満月の夜に産卵するってやつだな。
Didn't know
だ
that
が
either.
ウミガメだけじゃねえ。他に有名なのだとサンゴが産卵するのも満月の夜だ。
ああ、海の中が雪降ってるみたいになるやつっすね。
満月の夜は引力も強くなってるって科学的に実証されてんだ。当然人間にもその影響は及んでる。
人の出産にもってことっすか？
出産だけじゃねえよ。
It turns people into fucking werewolves. Have you never heard of that, Sua?
バイオリズムって言ったろ。
I wonder if that's where the myth of werewolves come from, because it's always the myth of like on a full moon is when people transform into those werewolves. Maybe it's something like that. I mean, most myths come from, just natural occurring phenomenon.
普通の生理現象はもちろん交通事故や事件、病気、食欲とか性欲とかにも密接なつながりがある。興奮すると頭に血が上ってるっていうだろ。
Yeah.
あれは月の引力に引っ張られてるんだよ。
Huh.
そりゃ極論だと思うっすよ。まるで個々の感情なんて関係なくて全部月のせいだって言ってるようなもんじゃないですか。
そこまでは言わないな。集団心理って言うだろ。この町に来た途端に楽しい気分になったり、ちょっと無茶したくなったりするかもしんねえんじゃないの？
Crowd psychology, eh? The public consciousness or whatever, coined by shit. Who was it coined by? Was it Young? Was it Young or was it somebody else? I can't remember. But that whole unconscious the public consciousness. That's it.
ニュージェネの一連の事件に対する反応だってそうだ。この町でそのニュースを見た連中は大抵反応が同じだ。どいつもこいつも楽しんでやがる。自分だけは被害者にならないって気持ちだ。対岸の火事を眺めていい気になってる。
そういう集団心理も GE レートのせいってことっすか？
可能性としてはありだろ。渋谷に来たら楽しい気分になるってのが若いやつらの頭の中に無意識に刷り込まれる。
若者がこの街に惹かれる理由になるってわけですね。
Sua really is a first runner, Van thought to himself, impressed. Junior Detective was still young, but that part of him truly was worthy of praise. Okay. So it's merely just it just adds on to the group crowd psychology of people coming to Shibuya, really. Perhaps, just the simple gravity, just like it's not like turning people like murderers or anything, but it's just a slight psychological effect on people, like so minute that people don't consciously think of it, and just adds on to the whole psychology of Shibuya, of these murders and how people act towards it. In addition, what set him apart from other young people was that he did not just follow his seniors blindly. Whenever he had a question or whenever he thought something did not make sense, he would always voice it, despite the fact that he was a junior in name.
GE レートについては一応分かったっすけど、それでどうやって犯人を探すんですか？もし GE レートに影響されて今回みたいな事件が起きたってなら、何百年も前から似たようなことが起きてないと変なんじゃ。
そいつはこれから調べればいいさ。専門だからな。
先輩は調べないんですか？
俺はデカだぞ。
Man smirked from ear to ear.
調べるのはニュージェネのことだけだ。そのために今日はわざわざ仕事サボって現場の GE レートを測ったんだ。もしこれまでの一連の現場の GE レートが異常を示したなら何を意味すると思う？
Yeah?
まさか。
So his eyes went wide and he stopped dead in his tracks. It seemed as if he had realized what Ban was trying to imply.
事件は G レートが異常を示している場所で起こるってことですか？
Ooh, interesting. So obviously it's somebody that knows about it.
だとしたら次の事件が起こる場所をある程度予測できるんですね。
まあそう決まったわけじゃない。それをこれから調べるんだ。
There was something working within this city. Something yet unknown, hidden deep beneath its flashy exterior. Perhaps it was akin to Pandora's box, something not meant to be touched by the hands of men. Thoughts such as these pervaded Ban's mind as he watched the pedestrians file down the streets of Shibuya. Interesting.
理想度もまだその意志による導き。
I guess maybe that's what the that organization was measuring when they were in Scrabble Crossing them. Maybe they were measuring the G rate, perhaps. They did call it an error, I think. Well, it's been a while since I've seen that scene, so I could be misremembering. But I feel like they said like an error, or like the level of errors. If they're referring to gravitational errors, then it would make a lot more sense. So they're so I guess they're purposely doing it in these sorts of areas in order to influence the public consciousness in Shibuya. Tack that on with the technology from America they're possibly going to implement, because I don't think they have that technology yet. I don't think there's been... Well, we've had... The only thing that goes against that theory is they must be like testing it out because of Takayumi's sister. I keep remembering that, you know, she said her brain went fuzzy and she saw her parents on the other side of the street. So it's obvious that this organization is trying to use that technology in conjunction with these GE rates in order to influence the public in some way. What way that is, we don't know. So interesting. So I guess that's the reason why they're doing these murders. Because what would bring a lot of attention to these sites? Accidents, murders, something out of the ordinary. Of course, hundreds of people are going to put their eyes on it when something like that happens. That's just human nature. But to do what? What is their ultimate goal, though? As soon as I heard those words, I knew I couldn't take it anymore. Fess, I've been going on and on about all these things I didn't care about, all while continuing to dodge what I actually asked her. I couldn't possibly care any less about some greater will or why Shibuya attracts young people or whatever else. There was only one thing I wanted to know.
理想度はどうすれば手に入る？
Mustering up my courage, I asked Fess that question.
教えてよ。
Without changing her aloof expression, Fess gazed down at the DL sword she was holding. Despite how gigantic the sword was, she seemed to be handling with incredible ease. Maybe she just had an absurd level of physical strength or something.
教えられることじゃないわ。
なんて
Why is it that you'll go on and on about all this random shit, yet you can't tell me the most crucial thing I need to know?
見つけなくちゃいけない。自分自身。方法なんて私には分からない。
You don't know? Then how in the living fuck did you get the DI sword you're holding in your hand right now?
理想度は力を持つ人のしかつらい。
Yeah. So, in other words, those without the power couldn't see them. But I could see it extremely clearly. But then, what did she mean by the power? Was she saying that I had a supernatural powers? Like, what the two fesses in front of me had?
君には私の剣が見えているでしょ。
Well, I wouldn't call it supernatural. More like, batshit fucking insane.
それが意味する
Delusional. Delusional. If Shogun and Yua were destroying my wife because of it, then I didn't want this stupid bullshit power. But I still did want a DI sword. Because it'll grant me salvation. Vess had said so. Stuff like the greater will and the reason why Shibuya attracted young people made no difference to me. I didn't want some random power, nor did I want to be roped into all this BS in any way, shape, or form. But in order to escape the clutches of Shogun and Yua, I had to get my hands on a sword.
感じて世界を選択した意志
But Fess's answer was as ambiguous as every other damn thing she said. So it looks like Fess's point of view is that of God, huh? God, a God-given right. Biting my lip, I tried desperately to think of any way I could extract information from her. But as a person who was terrible at talking to 3D people, I couldn't think of anything that'd be effective at all. I tried to pull from my bank of eroge situations, but everything that came to mind was fairly unsettling, such as whipping her in aphrodisiac, tying her up, or imprisoning her. Yeah, great ideas, man. Man, I may or may not be extremely fucked up. Shit, maybe, just maybe, Takumi, just a little possibility. Maybe, Takumi, maybe, oh no. The jury's still out on that.
君名前は
Vess turned her back to me, then slowly began to walk deeper into the tunnel.
私は岸本綾瀬
When she said that, I realized that we still hadn't introduced ourselves to each other yet.
西条匠
I couldn't see Ice's expression from where I was. Why was she laughing? I didn't know.
また会いましょう匠
Ice was moving farther and farther away. Did I say Ice? But please feel free to correct me. I fearfully turned my head to see what happened to the other Ice. Only to find out that she had disappeared without a trace. Had she literally disappeared, or had she just walked out of the underpass? Ais had said that the other Ais was a delusion. Maybe that was the power of the DI sword. I returned my gaze inside of the underpass, and right as I did, I saw that Ais was going up the other staircase, which was about 50 meters deeper into the tunnel. Eventually, her figure disappeared completely, and now all that remained was the eerie silence of the underpass. I wasn't brave enough to yell after her. I was too exhausted to run after her, and I was overwhelmed with the feeling that it wasn't worth the trouble. In the end, all I could do was return home as cautiously as I could, making sure not to be spotted by you or the police on the way. Well then. It felt like it had been ages since I'd last been in my base, but in reality it had only been half a day. I left my computer on, leaving my Serotan screensaver to cast a pale light together with her smile across the dark room. I locked the door tightly from the inside and threw myself onto the sofa. When I closed my eyes, I couldn't help but remember everything that happened today. I couldn't believe even the police thought I was the culprit. They had it all wrong. There's absolutely no way I could have killed all those people. Investigate all like you actually give a shit. This isn't a game. Otaku freaks like myself were ostracized by society, so they must have thought that they could just pin the crime on one of us and the public wouldn't even bat an eye. They couldn't actually catch the real culprit, so they wanted to save face by using me as a scapegoat. Damn it. What could I do to clear my name? The scene at a cafe flashed before my eyes, sending a chill down my spine. There existed someone that was even more terrifying than the police. Yua, my enemy. I had been so unbelievably relieved that I hadn't heard anything from her recently. I had been growing more and more confident that she'd never contact me again. But today I'd realized I had been mistaken. In order to oppose all of them, I needed a DI sword. I glanced at the cheap sword that was leaning against my PC desk. It was a fake. Ais had said that only people with the power can see them. The day I bought my sword, Nanami had seen me with it. And unlike Ais and Senna's swords, it didn't grow. Where would a real one be? I get my hands on one as soon as possible. Well, obviously it comes from yourself, Takumi. If I didn't, I was doomed. Getting wrapped up in something this insane, it sucks so much.
あなたは DID 多重人格なんです。
No, that's not true. That's impossible. Multiple personality disorders are supposed to be rare in Japan. You've been watching way too many goddamn movies, Yua. I don't have multiple personalities. There's no proof of that at all.
違う。あれは違う。
There's something up with you, Takumi. Maybe it's multiple personalities, or maybe it's not. But that chat log is consistent with what Yua told me.
あんなの捏造だ。証拠にはならない。
But there's no proof that I don't have multiple personalities.
先生は僕を多重人格だなんて診断しなかった。
But that very doctor, Dr. Takashina, is now gone for some unknown reason.
僕は僕だ。僕が一番よく知ってる。
But I don't actually know myself. I felt chills on the nape of my neck. The usual presence. Someone was watching me. The unknown gaze. Whose eyes are those eyes?
そうだ。将軍だ。あいつが犯人だ。チャットログにもそう書いてあったじゃないか。ユアは将軍の手下だし。ニュージェネ事件だって全部将軍が。
But does Shogun truly exist? Are you sure he isn't just a delusion?
僕はまともだ。まともなんだ。そうでしょ。
I clutched my head and shouted out to no one in particular, but what I got in reply was...
メールだよ、ボケナス。
Oh shit. Sarah? I sluggishly made my way over to the computer and checked my email. The sender was grim. Found something interesting, was the subject line. It was probably just bait. The contents of the email were meant to fuck with me. I didn't have the energy to deal with him personally right now, so I stuck to just reading the email. Nidan-kun, you haven't joined the chat room at all. Why? You haven't been on ESO either, so I had no choice but to email you. I would have told you to watch this vid because it's seriously fucked. I know what you're thinking, it's probably just grim fucking with me, but no. It was recorded by the new gen perp. The net's going absolutely insane over it. Hurry up and watch it before you miss the hype, SMH. Oh boy. Video that's been recorded by the new gen culprit? My fingertips on the mouse began to tremble. Couldn't take my eyes off the email. Did that mean the killer was in the video? Who was it? No, was it me? I both wanted to see it and didn't want to at the same time. This was the proof. Proof that I wasn't the killer, or proof that I was the killer. Which one would it be? I didn't know. It was a gamble. Feeling my heart began to beat faster and faster, I moved the mouse cursor and hovered over the link. But I couldn't work up the courage to click the URL.
私あなたを助けたい。
Shut up. Don't treat me like a criminal. Don't act like you feel sorry for me. I didn't do it. You're the one on the criminal side, you are. An intense fit of rage and clicked on the URL. Oh shit. YouTube. It was a YouTube video. Let's see, what type of videos are we? We got dive, we got group dive video, recording madness in Shibuya, group dive. Oh no. The word loading appeared in the video window.
僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない
Jesus. In reality, it only took about 10 seconds for the video to load, but those 10 seconds felt like an eternity to me. Eventually, it finished loading, and the video started to play. It was a video of a very dark place. The background was pitch black. Maybe it was indoors. I leaned my head in close to the monitor, trying my best to parse the information on the screen. It was dark and therefore hard to see, but there were several men and women there. They were all making a ton of noise. Maybe it was because the bitrate was too low, maybe because the people in the video were too distraught, but I couldn't make out a single thing they were saying. Every once in a while, whenever someone screamed violently, the sound would clip horribly. After watching for a bit longer, I was able to determine that there were 5 people in the video. If you included the cameraman, it would be 6. The cameraman didn't enter the frame at all. Because of how dark it was, the faces of the 5 people were just barely visible. As though to comfort one another, they were caressing each other's heads, patting each other's shoulders, and hugging. I could also hear the high-pitched sobbing of a girl, likely overcome with emotion. It was definitely bizarre, but how did this video have any connection to Nugent? Was the person filming this really a Nugent culprit? At the very least, I knew I had no memory of recording something like this. God, this is fucking creepy. And then after a short while, the camera, or rather the person holding the camera, began to slowly move forward. The 5 subjects, who were about 5 meters away from the cameraman, gradually grew larger and larger. The picture was fairly grainy. Maybe the original image data was re-encoded at an extremely low bit rate in order to reduce its size. A modern video camera should have night vision functions, so I wondered why the cameraman hadn't made use of it. Could have been an older camera? As soon as I thought that, the camera suddenly panned to the left, and then to the right, showing the surrounding scenery. What I had initially thought was just the pitch black darkness of a room was actually the night sky. In other words, the video had been recorded outdoors. As for the reason why there wasn't a single building or anything, it is because the video had been taken on the roof of a skyscraper. The 5 people were on the edge of the roof of a very tall building. Right behind them was the ledge, and right below that ledge was the glittering nightscape of Shibuya that could only be seen at high altitudes. Finally understood. I finally understood what this video was. I finally understood why it was said to have been recorded by the Nugent culprit. There was footage of it. A locked room mystery in which a group of 5 men and women jumped from the roof of Cornelius Tower. The sole fact that remained unclear about Nugent was whether or not this specific incident was a murder case or a group suicide. If this video was one of the 5 people who jumped to their deaths, then that would mean there had been a 6th person if the scene of the incident occurred. The 5 people shown in the video hadn't just been making noise for the sake of it. They were all slumped down on the ground crying and shouting as they huddled together. They all refused to give up despite the fact that they were fated to die soon. One was shaking their head in denial as they cried. One was clutching their hair tightly as they fell to their knees, their shoulders heaving with each sob. One was pleading with the cameraman as they sobbed, asking why they were doing this. One had already gone mad and was laughing as tears streamed down his face. It was a rapid, violent desire to stay alive, a fervent, intense plea to not die. Disconsolate indignation that screamed, "Why is this happening to us?" An innumerable wall of emotion swirled around the group. Yet in a bizarre juxtaposition, the cameraman's voice was never once heard. The cameraman was eerily calm. No matter how much I pleaded with the footage that had been taken nearly a month ago, nothing was going to change. I knew full well that was meaningless, but I subconsciously screamed at my monitor all the same.
こいつらみんな死にたくなんかないんだぞ。
With no possible way for my words to reach them, the cameraman was holding moved even closer to the 5 people. Terrified, the 5 of them all tried to claw away to get away from the camera. But they couldn't. Right behind them was the very edge of the helipad. There was no guardrail of any kind. The 5 of them had nowhere to go. If they moved back even a little bit farther, they would fall. Refusing to heed the 5's pleas for their lives, the cameraman continued to focus solely on filming, as if to agitate the 5 all the more. He had driven them completely to the edge, to the point where they took no further action at all. Then, without any sort of cue, nor any form of signaling one another, the 5 people who had all been crying out in grief suddenly fell silent. Then, they all stood up. The wind on the rooftop of the Cornelius Tower was powerful. Beckoned by the wind, the 5 of them nearly staggered. If there was even the slightest misstep, they would fall. As if in preparation for such a thing, the 5 men and women all joined hands, seemingly in resignation. They grasped each other's hands tightly.
よせ。やめろ。謝るな。
Silence. It seemed to me that even the sound of the wind whipping violently through the air had stopped. All I could hear was the sound of cars driving along Shuto Expressway at the foot of the building. Even then, the cameraman did not make a single move. And then, a single person among the 5 whispered.
その目誰の目?
What the fuck? I froze in front of the monitor, feeling as though my heart was being strangled by an ice-cold hand.
なんでまたその言葉なんだよ。
Wasn't this supposed to be the first new gen case? Whose eyes are those eyes have been the dying message from the vampire case? And that one came forth. This didn't make any goddamn sense. Paying no mind to the screamings on my head, the video continued to play. Hand in hand, the 5 men and women slowly stepped out into the empty air, almost as if there was a path laid out before them. And then, just like that, the 5 fell into the nightscape of the big city. I bit my lip and covered my eyes. Oh my god! Jesus fuck. Ugh. Didn't even need an image, just that sound. My god. The group dive hadn't been a mass suicide. It too was a murder case. The culprit had been there when it happened. I have to say, the way with that was described and visualized, it really did remind me of like an old school creepypasta I would read back in like 2012, 2013 perhaps. Or just like an internet urban legend, you know, of a mysterious video of 5 people jumping off a building and no context for it at all. I don't know. It just surprises me with especially with like Eastern media, of the relationship between people and the internet. Like like there are many pieces of media from, well, let's just say specifically Japan, that deal with it, such as Serial Experiments Wayne, for example. Big example of that. Pulse, which is a horror movie I need to check out, which is about the internet, if I think so. I need to check out that movie. But there's always been this kind of, well, it's called, I think the genre is called Denpa, if I'm being correct in that assessment, of how like, just technology influences people and drives them to do things. And it's always been such an interesting genre to me because, well, as a guy who grew up in the mid-2000s when the excuse me, when the internet was just becoming a big thing when I was growing up, I always find the relationship between people and the internet to be such a fascinating topic And I've always been so amazed that really the first ones that were able to make art about it or media about it was Japan. With all these, because Serial Experiments Rain came out in like, I think 1990, if I remember correctly. This came out, I say around 2006, 2005 perhaps. Pulse came out in like 2001. Around that time, like late 90s, early 2000s. All this Japanese media about how the internet, or I guess more broadly, technology influences people and drives them to do things. While here in the West, I feel like we've only now just recently like understood the effects of it, or are able to create media based on that, such as the whole digital horror type craze nowadays, with like Petscop and like Gmod ARGs and shit like that, and Marble Hornets as well, but that's more like Swinner. I digress. I just find it so fascinating that the first ones that were able to capture that feeling, or that conversation, was Japan from the late 90s into the early 2000s. And this game definitely captures that topic as well, that like, how does technology influence people, or how do incidences or like murder sprees happen in a quote-unquote modern age? How does it spread around? How does it affect public perception about that, of the new gen murders, and how people online react to that? And because of the internet's how you're able to access it, you're able to have this kind of mask, this kind of anonymous status on the internet, so you're able to say anything at all. That's why most people we've seen so far in this game really not take this new gen thing seriously. They don't take it seriously. I mean, for God's sake, the whole message of whose eyes are those eyes became a sort of meme, a meme that just kept on repeating over and over and over again, even though it came from a fucking crime scene of a man whose skin was like cut off, or he was skinned pretty much. And how I guess that ties in with the whole like gravitational error, and how that kind of like a little bit affects the public consciousness that Ben was talking about as well, of how it really does give that sort of vibe of like, that would never happen to me. The new gen murders, that would never happen to me, so I really don't have to worry about it. I can joke about it. I can make memes about it. I can just do whatever, because it will never happen to me, you know. And I guess it just goes to show you, like, I guess the white, like, I don't know, the whole, this is a whole topic for another day, but like how violence has become so normalized in today's society, I guess, due in part to the internet, really, with just the mass information of the internet. There's just, you know what's happening in, like, fucking, let's say, Zimbabwe, for example. You know, like, instantly, like, if you just look it up, you know what the hell is going on there. And because violence happens every day in the world, since that's reality, we become normalized to it. We just kind of don't care, because if we did care, it would fuck us up. It would, like, if we really, really thought about it, of all the trauma, of all the tragedy in the world, we would go kind of mad. So we can just, the only thing we can do to cope with that is to either ignore it or just make light of it. I just feel like it's such just a fascinating conversation about how the internet has affected humanity and their psychology. I always find that conversation so fascinating. Anyway, enough of that diatribe. It too was a murder case. The culprit had been there when it happened. And as for who'd filmed the video, I knew who it was. mixed in with the sound of the strong wind on the rooftop, mixed in with the sound of the 5 people crying out in grief, mixed in with the blaring horns from Shudo Expressway below. I was certain that I heard one particular faint sound. It was the sound of a creaking steel, a sound that could only be heard when the cameraman was moving forward, the sound of a real chair.
あの時、僕の前に現れたのは現実だったんだね。
Shogun.
カメラの目線が低すぎだよ。将軍。
Son of a bitch. Chapter 4, done. Chapter 5, delusion. Victim was a 56-year-old university professor. To no one's surprise, the week the video of the group dive exploded. Graham had told me that the entire internet was going insane, and lo and behold, he wasn't lying. A huge chunk of that channel was now convinced that all 4 New Gen murders had been committed by the same person. Whose eyes are those eyes is the New Gen killer signature move. The guy who'd upped it on Mewtwo has to be the perp. Wheat, whose eyes are those eyes, is so freaking sweet. Okay, I'll report that immediate. Whoa, whose eyes are... Wheatie was running out at the scene of the vampire, yeah? That means there's a connection between the first and the last case, despite all the people saying they had nothing to do with each other. Which then means that the man-child and crucifixion cases also had to be connected. Damn, I'm getting way into this. Whose eyes are those eyes? Also, Wheat's first appearance was at the vampire case, so it couldn't possibly have copied the group dive. No, don't work. Smoke wheat every day. I saw the video, but it looks fake as shit. Some actors just did it for views. I bet 1 perk on it. You twats really ought to stop using whose eyes or whatever the fuck so often. The killer just wants attention, and you're giving it to them. Same dude did all the New Gen murders? Whose eyes are those? Eyes. Nah, the tower in that vid's actually just 2 meters tall. There's trampoline or something below. Agreed. If that phrase keeps being a trend, there will be even more murders. Wheat. I live in Shibuya, you know? Obligatory don't work. Don't look. The Mewtwo video, it's topping the charts. The view count, it's skyrocketing. So beautiful. Oh, don't look, guys. Trying to make the MHK News top report. Woo! Anything from the perp beyond Reed yet? Breaking news taking over every station. Except TV, though. The news on TV was just as erratic. Like, 140 had said heavily about available stations, save for TV had been interrupted by the breaking news where they played the leaked video on loop. The broadcast had lasted for about an hour. It was pretty shocking to see that the footage had actually been across the entire country. Damn. Once again, as I was saying before, the normalization of violence, which I guess didn't start with the internet, but really with breaking news, car chases being broadcast for hundreds of people to see. Of course, all the stations censored the part where they dived off the building at the end, but it was still extremely impactful. The opinions of those on TV were more or less the exact same as everyone else's online. They all attributed the 4 New Gen cases to the same culprit. Then again, that wasn't really much of a surprise. They had finally found a common denominator between them all, after all. Whose eyes are those eyes? It had become a popular phrase all throughout Shibuya. It's like I wouldn't say it's not meme. It's more of like a cognito hazard, perhaps. Like, maybe that's what it's turning into. A sort of an idea that spreads. What it does to people, who knows, but I don't know. The phrase had first been shown to the world when the details behind the 4th case, the vampire, were shared. People then learned that the victims of the group dive had said it as well, even though it occurred a month before the vampire case. And the four incidences that occurred so far had been used in both the first and the last one. It had to mean something, made the theory that a single person was behind the murders all the more probable. The police then held a press conference, saying that they intended to identify the person and posted the video as soon as they could. A number of politicians commented that the actions of the culprit were completely deplorable and that they needed to be apprehended immediately. The YouTube video had been removed by a moderator less than 3 hours after it was uploaded, but by then it was too late. That channel had already gotten their hands on it, and from there nothing could have stopped it from being re-uploaded and spreading like wildfire. And then, just before midnight, the following facts had been revealed through a police statement. The group dive video was uploaded from a computer located in the Shibuya manga cafe known as A Cafe. It was uploaded from a specific private room in the facility, room number 37. Oh my fucking god. Oh, what the fuck? Oh, what the fuck? Oh, this is not looking good for you, Takumi. Oh, shit. I sat paralyzed in my seat, my head hanging low as I hugged myself tightly. Without realizing it, I had started eavesdropping. I was becoming hypersensitive to the voices coming from my surroundings. I overheard a lot of conversations, and unsurprisingly, the group dive video was the topic on everyone's minds. Some girls were even jokingly saying to each other, "Whose eyes are those eyes?" I bit my lip and let my gaze wander onto the surface of my desk. That video was evidence. Evidence that Shogun had actually existed. Evidence that I hadn't killed anyone. It proved that I didn't have multiple personalities, that the old-looking man in the wheelchair was the new gen killer. But why would Shogun even upload it? Why would he hint at himself being the killer when the culprit's identity had been shrouded in mystery so far? Only two explanations made sense to me. One, Shogun was showing off by killing people because it amused him, which was pretty likely considering that time when he appeared in front of me. Or he was trying to provoke me. For some reason, Shogun and his undoing Yua were doing everything in their power to fuck with me. I didn't know the reason why, I just knew that they were trying to frame me as the new gen culprit. At this point, even the police were probably suspicious of me. Shogun was trying to corner me.
僕のメッセージは受け取ってくれた？
Message.
目覚めるんだ。早く
Awaken.
出ないともっとたくさんの人が死んじゃうことになるから
Awaken.
忘れないで。君は逃げちゃいけない。
You must awaken. When he appeared in front of me, that was what he said. It felt like he'd been trying to intimidate me, and that it was basically saying, "I'm going to kill you too, don't you dare run away." And now he totally blindsided me by uploading that video and making sure that it spread all throughout Japan. There's no doubt that Shogun had moved his plan to the next phase. It'd been naive to think that I wasn't being targeted anymore. If anything, I'd be more accurate to say that he's plotting against me had moved from passive to active. He was now finally in full swing. I was terrified, especially with that video. Shogun had killed 5 high schoolers without even lifting a finger, despite being even worse off physically than me. If all the new gen cases were actually his doing, then all of those other gruesome murderers, the man-child, crucifixion, vampire, had all been enacted by that very same feral body. Or maybe you had helped him out. In any case, I didn't have any faith that I'd be able to defend myself against people who'd commit such horrible atrocities. Just thinking of them sent chills down my spine, chills that combined with the red-hot anger I was feeling. Why was I being targeted like this? What did I do to deserve it? And there was also that message, "Whose eyes are those eyes?" If I wasn't careful, I would start trembling uncontrollably. To keep that under control, I had to keep my body from relaxing. I had to always be aware of my surroundings and be ready to bolt the second I sensed someone approaching. I didn't know when Shogun or Yua would show themselves again. Hell, I had no guarantee that Yua was Shogun's only underling. Maybe even my own classmates are under his influence, their laughter and idle chatter acting as mere camouflage till just the right moment. I had to find a way to parry surprise attacks like the one in that cafe yesterday. If I didn't, I'd be killed next time for sure. I needed to get a DI sword ASAP. The only way out of this was to get a DI sword. I'd internalized what Ais and Senna had said, and I searched online about it, and it all had me convinced. Getting my hands on the DI sword would save me. The night before, I desperately tried to gather information on DI swords while keeping an eye on the new gen shitstorm, but my research barely bore any results. I cradled my head, tearing on my greasy hair. How was I supposed to find a DI sword?
見つけなくちゃいけない。自分自身で。方法なんて私には分からない。
You gotta believe in yourself, Takumi. Nice had said that, but that was barely even a hint. It's either that or, you stab yourself with a dagger full of hemoanima, and probably you'll get your sword then. The other Takumi got it fired that way, so. My thoughts weighed heavily on me. I was starting to freak out. My heart was steadily getting crushed by anxiety. I needed to hurry and find a DI sword. Whatever it took, I had to find one. If I didn't, I'd be done for. Before becoming New Gen's next victim, I had to find one. But I needed to find out how. I had no clue how you were supposed to get one. I needed some kind of hint, something, anything. I had to figure it out fast, or I'd lose my chance at finding it. Was I even capable of finding one? This was no time to be at school. It was my own life. We're graduating. I didn't need to debate which one was more important. And yet, why was I... Sensing someone approaching me, I quickly raised my head and braced myself for contact.
びっくりした。
Mimi was standing there, blinking repeatedly as if she'd been stunned by my sudden movement. I made you jump? Stop scaring me like that. All the stress in my body released all at once, and I crumpled on top of my desk with a big sigh.
タク、大丈夫？
Fulfilling her usual quota, Mimi peered into my face. I hurriedly lowered my eyes.
顔、真っ青だよ。汗もすごいし。でも血走っちゃってる。
Damn. Was Remy with me or against me? An ally or an enemy? After she saved me, I'd grown a lot less wary of her. But there were still a ton of unanswered questions I had yet to figure out. Like why she'd been covered in blood at the scene of the crucifixion. Or how we were supposed to be such good friends, and that we'd been classmates since our first year, yet I had no recollection of it.
タク、体調悪いの？
Remy tilted her head slightly, a worried expression on her face.
なんでもない。
I turned away from her. I couldn't say it to her face. When the classes for the day finally ended, I felt like every ounce of energy had been drained from my body. Even during class, all I had done was remain on high alert, repeatedly scanning my surroundings. I hadn't slept since yesterday, but staying this vigilant kept me wide awake. The school day felt like an eternity, and the sheer amount of time I'd spent there sent me spiraling into a deep depression. Why is it that the way we perceive time changes depending on our mood? Some say that time flows at a constant rate, but that might actually be true. The speed of time changes depending on each person's subjective perspective. I've always realized that it's a conspiracy to homogenize humanity's understanding of the concept of time by implementing units like seconds and hours, also they can see people into forgetting that perception of time varies from person to person. And building off that theory, if the length of time is dependent on each person's perception, then conversely, doesn't that mean that the flow of time can be controlled at will? As I thought about that, I remembered Senna talking about controlling other people's wills. And conversely,
生まれながらの目が不自由な人でも目の前にある景色がちゃんと見えるようになる。ビデオカメラのような映像機器を介して
Video data from a camera is converted into electrical signals that are sent directly to the brain, causing the person to observe that sequence of images. Conversely, that would mean converting the images that a person observes into electrical signals and sending them to equipment that can render video. The aforementioned equipment didn't have to be a video camera either. For example, what would happen if you connected a person to a hard disk recorder, then showed them recordings of someone's vacation? What if instead of real-life recordings, you showed them an anime? Technically, anime is 2D and therefore delusionary. But people who are blind from birth have never seen anything from the 3D world, so if they were shown an anime and told this is how the world is, then they would believe that the 2D world is reality, right? To that person, that delusion would be their reality. A delusion perceived as reality. Oh shit. Here's another example. If person A sent an image from their brain to a hard disk recorder that processed it and transmitted the image to person B's brain, then person A's delusion would become person B's reality. So this was the thing I was talking about, like, in the beginning, of how, like, if you send images to a person's brain or to their eyes, and they didn't know it, that would be their reality. But let's go ahead and pick a good delusion this time, since we haven't chose one of them in a while. Delusion becoming reality. In theory, it was possible. Holy shit, I was a genius! I was over the moon by how brilliant my theory was. Maybe that was how I acquired the eye sword. Ais had said they had something to do with delusions, hadn't she? Alright, should hurry up and go home so I can look it up. Nope, delusion. I left the classroom and headed for the school entrance, refusing to let my eyes wander anywhere. As I made my way out, I stuck to my usual routine, walking as close to the wall as I could, all while keeping my head low so that I wouldn't stand out. The final bell had already rung a little bit ago, so a lot of the students on cleaning duty or doing club shit were still around. Basically, everyone who opted to go straight home already had. School always felt somewhat lonely, or even wistful after the final bell rang. No matter where I went, it always felt that way, whether they were ancient buildings made of wood or newer structures like Sunoe. Well, not that I ever set foot in any wooden school buildings in anything other than a logo. As I unconsciously walked through the corridor under the setting sun, my mind wandering around all sorts of inconsequential stuff. I spotted a strange figure coming towards me. It was a single girl waddling forward, carrying 2 large cardboard boxes. I couldn't see her face behind the boxes, and she probably couldn't see a thing in front of her. Someone was asking to eat shit. If this was an Loge, the scenario would 100% result in us running into each other and me tripping the flag. Thought about attempting to do just that, but concluded that'd be best to keep it as just a thought, because in reality I didn't want to actually do it. Instead, my alarm bell started going off. There was a legitimate possibility that she was one of Shogun's assassins. Stay away from her. Be extremely careful. I paid careful attention to each of her steps. She kept drawing nearer and nearer, sometimes tilting to the left or to the right. Meanwhile, it kept walking along the left wall of the corridor. As the girl started moving to her right, I sped up. We then passed each other without any issues. But right then I heard something fall, and I quickly turned my gaze downward without even thinking. Someone had dropped their student handbook, stopping my tracks. Huh. Had the girl with the boxes dropped it? As I stared at the student handbook, my thoughts began to wander. Doubt arose in my mind. Why had that student handbook fallen at the exact moment? It was way too conspicuous. It was practically begging to get picked up. Was it a trap? Had she dropped it on purpose? The girl had been carrying boxes with both hands. Her hands were occupied. If the student handbook had been in her skirt pocket, it would have been entirely impossible for her to take it out and drop it. However, I hadn't seen where it had fallen from. Maybe the girl had been holding it from the very beginning, hiding it beneath the boxes. I wasn't sure. It might have not been on purpose. The more realistic option was that it was just a coincidence. I followed the girl's figure with my eyes, or tried to anyway.
あ、
At that precise moment, the girl took a turn down the hall and disappeared. I had only seen her for a split second. She hadn't looked like someone I knew. Her hair had been short, I think. No, maybe it had been long, actually. I couldn't say for sure which. Naturally, I hadn't seen her face either. When I passed her, it had been hidden behind the boxes. The student handbook and I were now all alone in the hallway. The sensible options probably were to either pick it up and deliver it to the staff room or rush after the girl and ask her about it, but I was hesitant to carry out either. I looked around me. There were no other students in sight. They could somewhat make out the sound of girls laughing halfway in the distance. It probably wasn't a trap. The handbook's owner had already left. How could this possibly end up being a trap? Could there be a small bomb inside the handbook? No, that was way too unrealistic. It's like putting bombs in food or something. Or fucking Killer Queen. If I picked up the handbook right at that moment, nothing would happen. Yeah, nothing was going to happen. Just in case, I should check the handbook to see who the girl was. She could have been one of Shogun's underlings. I should check her name, class, and photo, then leave the handbook here. I couldn't be fucked to go after her and give it back. Nevertheless, I still carefully scanned the area just to be sure no one was around. Then, after I was sure I was alone, I picked up the handbook and casually opened it to the first page. What the fuck? I hurriedly threw the handbook away. What was that? I'd never been so creeped out before. It was so unbelievably eerie. It didn't just scare me, I felt sick to my stomach. This was very cruel and malicious, blatant harassment aimed specifically at me. Who would go so far as to do this? Wait, of course, it'd be the girl from before. That girl actually was Shogun's underling. She had to be. I only glanced at the student handbook, but all the information that should have been on the first page, such as the name, the birthday, and the class, was blacked out. In addition, the portrait that should have been attached had been removed. I felt like I was going to puke. Ooh, damn. I was hit with an intense wave of nausea. I wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. Covering my mouth, I moved towards the stairs. I ran through the courtyard with no real destination in mind until I could no longer hold back the urge to vomit. The second I fell to my... Ooh, geez. Wow, what a sound. The second I fell to my knees, the entire contents of my stomach began spilling out. Ugh. The stomach acid made my throat burn. Ugh. Then my vision blurred from tears. It was hard to breathe. The aftertaste was absolutely vile. Ugh. Yeah, tell me about it. I must have been way more maxed than I thought I was. Might have been because of all the all-nighter I pulled. As I wiped the corners of my mouth, I looked all around me restlessly, but I couldn't see a soul. However, the shadowy corners and the bright spots I never usually paid attention to had become terrifying to me. I began to think that Yua and Shogun must be hiding in them. The second my brain came up with that, I could no longer take a single step. Someone, save me. I wanted to cry. I felt nauseous all over again. I didn't end up vomiting, but I had dry heaves several times. The pain made me cry even harder. I was nearly sobbing at this point. But then suddenly, someone's hand began to gently rub my back. Terrified, I turned around.
大丈夫
Aw. Remy was there.
大丈夫だよ
I wasn't being condemned for feeling this way. No, her words were a tender affirmation.
私はタクの味方だから
She didn't even so much as grimace at the smell of my vomit. She didn't show any signs of disdain when she saw my face covered in tears and snot, nor when she saw the vomit still clinging to the corners of my mouth. She simply gave me a gentle smile, reassuring me that it would be all okay. She drew closer to me. She continued rubbing my back gently. Why was it that, before and even now, every time I thought I needed to be saved, Remy would always heroically appear in front of me? Right now, Remy was right here. He reassured me. I felt better. Before I even realized what was happening, my true feelings began to pour out, despite the fact that I had never talked about myself.
助けて。一人は怖いんだ。
Maybe that was why I bothered coming to school. Up until now, I'd always thought I'd be way better off alone. Of course, even now, it's still terrifying to talk to others. I wasn't at all confident in my ability to actually talk to anyone, but with Shogun and Yua trying to destroy my life, I'd never been so anxious, scared, and alone. I wanted someone to be there for me. They didn't even need to be nice to me. I just wanted someone to be present.
一人は怖い。
だったら私が一緒にいてあげる。
Those words held no ill will, no hesitation, no illusion.
さすがに24時間ずっとは無理だけど。
God damn it. These scenes with Takumi and Remy are really getting to me. Son of a bitch. Oh god, it really is. It's pulling at my heart. Oh my god. It's really getting to me. Holy fuck. Her shy gaze suddenly moved up towards the sky. Her eyes were looking so far away. Just what could she be looking at in that sky?
朝一緒に学校行って、学校では休み時間にどうでもいいこと話して、お昼休みは一緒にご飯食べて、夕方一緒に帰って、帰るついでにたまにどこかのお店に寄ったりして、タックの部屋でちょっとだけおしゃべりして、それでまた明日ねって手を振って別れて、そんなのでいいなら私いくらでもしてあげるよ。そういうの結構憧れなんだ。
Wasn't that kind of almost like being in a relationship? I was stunned. She was completely serious. I could see it on her face.
どうしてどうしてそこまでしてくれるの？
それは
Because if like if I had ever seen one, right? Because I love you, Taku. I could see it coming from a mile away. That had to be what she was going to say, right? Granted, I had no clue why Remy would have fallen for me. No, wait, this shit had to be bait. Something similar had happened before with Yua. With her, it had all been nothing more than a deception, ending with me drowning in the depths of despair. So I couldn't get my hopes up. I had to prepare for the worst. It was possible that Remy too wasn't and
ビシッ
She suddenly saluted me. I was taken aback by the sad suddenness of it, and my mind shot to the possibility that she was about to reveal her true self. And yet all that I saw in Remy's face was that same bright, gentle smile.
そんなの友達だからに決まってるでしょ。私にしてみればタクを助けてあげるのは当然なの。どうしてとか寂しいこと言わない。わかった？
Because we were friends. If she'd said because I love you, Taki, and this is how I'm gonna show it, it would have felt like my life had begun anew. But even if we'd be friends, that alone made me incredibly happy. Having someone being kind to me. Having someone do things for me without expecting anything in return. I couldn't believe how happy it made me. It might have been the very first time I ever felt like that. But above all else, it made me realize that I wasn't alone. To me, Remy's existence was my salvation. The nausea I felt earlier had finally subsided, and I was feeling much better.
はい、使う？
Remy held out a vermilion handkerchief. It had a faint floral scent. I meekly accepted it, but I was hesitant to use it.
汚しちゃっていいよ。タクにあげる。
ありがとう。
I felt guilty about it, but I ultimately decided that I would accept her generosity. I wiped out the vomit that stained the corners of my mouth with a handkerchief. It was the first time I'd ever received a present from a girl that wasn't a family member. I wasn't so sure about calling it a present, though. For me, someone who was so isolated and helpless, even a simple thing like this felt like an irreplaceable treasure to me. I felt so delighted, so relieved that I nearly started to cry all over again.
それじゃあ帰ろっか。
God damn it. God damn it, this scene. Oh, these... Ah, God damn it, this... Oh... It's getting to me, man. It's really getting to me here. Holy shit. God, it's reminding me of like a Higurashi scene. Because it just tugs at my heart. It's just like, oh my god. Her voice was so carefree.
一緒に。
Apparently she already intended to make good on what she said before. That she stayed by my side. Not that I told her whether I wanted her to or not yet. It wasn't like I had any intention of saying no. Being alone terrified me. I didn't want to be alone. As I was now, I had no one to rely on but Remy. God. God. Oh, that really got me. Fuck. Shit. However, I still couldn't say that I was stable now, even with Remy with me. On the way back, I chose to take a different route than usual, walking cautiously all the way. I couldn't stop trembling. Every corner with even an inch of shadow seemed dangerous. Every time I got to any kind of intersection, I was tormented by delusions of you or a shogun waiting for me at the end of it, making me freeze in place. Whenever that happened, Remy would take over. She would look over toward the end of the intersecting road, and when the coast was clear, she'd nod to me.
大丈夫。誰もいないよ。
Relieved, I followed after her. Everything she'd done without even a hint of irritation.
ねえ、聞いていいかな。一体何があったの？
I was slightly hesitant to tell her. If I said something here, Remy could become a target for Shogun. I would get her involved.
話したくないなら無理に話さなくても。
いや、話すよ。
My mouth had already started moving. I definitely didn't feel comfortable with the prospect of getting her involved, but if I didn't explain to her what was happening here, she wouldn't be able to understand the gravity of the situation. For the sake of my well-being, I had to turn a blind eye to the possibility that it might put her in danger. She'd been the one who said she stayed by my side, so I was sure she'd be fine with it. So I told her everything. I told her that Shogun was the actual new-gen culprit, that Yui was one of his underlings, that they were both stalking me, what had happened in front of 107 the other day. I laid it all bare, albeit not without a fair share of stuttering. When I told her about the time Shogun appeared before in a wheelchair, Remy's lips pursed, and she began to ponder. I had always wanted to ask her about back then. Seemed like now was as good a time as any.
いたかな。車椅子のおじいさんなんて。
She certainly didn't sound like she had.
思い出して。大切なことだ。
でも。
Remy frowned, almost like she was hesitant to say what was on her mind.
そもそもあの時渋谷の駅前が無人だったなんてことなかったよ。いつもと同じだった。
So that was what Remy had seen back then. I was hoping that she and I would agree on what we'd seen, but I guess not. Remy or me, which one of us had seen what the area was actually supposed to look like? Good question. Had I been wrong about what I'd seen after all? Had that empty Shibuya been nothing more than a delusion of mine? But if it was, then there was a small discrepancy. An old man had appeared in that empty Shibuya, Shogun. What was the explanation for that? If the Shibuya being empty part was a delusion, then Shogun could be a delusion as well.
駅前って人が多いでしょ。だから車椅子の人がいてもなかなか気がつかないだろうし。要するに見てないってこと。ごめんね、役に立てなくて。
At the very least, I knew Shogun himself wasn't a delusion. At first, I thought he was just a delusion, but ever since the group dive video had come out, my perception of him had swapped to the exact opposite. Shogun was real. He existed in reality. But that empty Shibuya, meanwhile, could have been just a delusion. In reality, the front of the station had been overflowing with people, just like it always was. I was the only one who observed something different, a different set of scenery than everyone else. But how could that be possible?
ねえ、それよりお願いがあるんだけど、いい？
Remy joined her hands together in a prayer-like gesture.
CD を買いに行きたいんだ。せっかくここまで来てからちょっと寄っていきたいんだけど、いいかな？
I really wanted to get back to my base as soon as possible. The reason I'd taken such a long detour was because I was afraid of the possibility that you or Shogun might have been ready to ambush me. It wasn't so I could go on some shopping spree. But if I refused after all that, she might end up going back on her promise to stay by my side. If I were to fuck up badly enough, she could get angry and leave by herself. What the hell should I do? This sucked. I needed Remy to stay with me. I wasn't sure I could make it to my base alone. In the end, I wasn't able to refuse. So I did what I had to in order to survive and stuck as close as possible to her. I guess it was reasonable to think that Yua wouldn't attack me in a public place like this, but I was more afraid that they might have been hiding among the crowd. Every time I would almost bump into someone, I would scream inside my head.
パトカーだ。
Remy's words frightened me. I quickly retreated behind her. What the fuck? Remy was right. There were two police cars parked on the road, and right next to them were police officers in uniform. The police had also been pursuing me, obviously. The basis behind it was a completely false accusation, but the incompetent police didn't know that. Those cops might have been searching for me too. Or so I thought, but that apparently wasn't the case. The cops' gazes were fixated on the crowd of people marching down the street like they owned it. Were they protesters or something? They were carrying these gigantic signs and flags, and they were wearing the typical sashes and headbands you see among those kinds of people. There was a child marching along with his parents, holding hands with both of them. He looked like he had no idea where he was, and he was wearing a t-shirt with the words, "Whose eyes are those eyes?" written on it in permanent marker. I bit my lip. What the hell? Protect Shibuya from terrorists? The people marching were of all ages and genders. The march was mostly silent and solemn, but at times they all echoed their chants. Drive the devil out of Shibuya, expel his demons from this place.
悪魔？
God, it really is causing a hysteria. And the signs were a number of different things, such as drive the devil out of town or protect Shibuya from terrorists. Must have been some kind of protest against the new gen incidents. There's no point in protesting against that. If they had the time to do that, then they could please could they just please just hunt down Shogun and kill him? Then I wouldn't need to worry about him anymore.
タク、行こう。
Clearly uninterested, Remy turned her gaze away from the protesters and quickly started walking towards the entrance to the CD shop. As soon as we entered the shop, Remy headed straight towards the indie section. Unlike the J-pop section, there weren't many customers there. Remy stopped in front of a shelf P and started looking for the CD she wanted. But after a minute of browsing, her shoulders slumped.
やっぱりないな。
An indie group whose name started with P? Could that be...
タクはファンタズムってバンドを知ってる？今話題になってるけど。
Of course I do. So it was them. How could I not know them? I hadn't even gone to see their concert. I owned a CD. I nodded and Remy smiled.
私、そういう情報は結構疎くて、最近になって知ったんだ。それで、友達に借りようかと思ったんだけど、なかなか手に入らないらしくて、誰も持ってないんだよ。だから、CD 買うしかないかなって思って、ここ1週間ぐらいあちこち探してみたんだけど、どこも売り切れ中。次はいつ入るんだろう。
僕持ってる。
Remy's eyes went wide.
持ってるって CD?
I showed her a nod, and when I did that, Remy... put her hands on my shoulders. I gotta go with good for Remy. I have to. It melts my heart. I have to do it. Put her hands on my shoulders. She suddenly brought her face in closer to mine, which immediately made me frustrated. The sweet smell of shampoo wafting from Remy's hair tickled my nose, and I felt my face turning red.
ねえタク、取引しよう。
A deal?
その CD 貸してくれたら、見返りに私。
Here we go. She looked at me, her expression dead serious. I gulped. She'll what? What was she going to do? Here we fucking go. Remy's cheek. Here we go. Remy's cheeks flushed slightly in embarrassment. And then, having seemingly made up her mind, she whispered something to me. Goofy ass
私の
music.
こと好きにしていいよ。
When I understood the meaning behind her words, my brain stopped computing. I couldn't tell if she was joking or being serious. I tried to look away, but before I could,
しゃがんで。
Remy glanced at our surroundings and pressed down on my shoulders hard. Without really knowing why, I obeyed her. I crouched down and leaned against the CD shelves, hugging my knees. Remy also crouched down in front of me. I was completely lost. What the hell was she planning?
膝伸ばして。
Did she want me to sit directly on the floor? Oh boy. oh boy. Where the hell is this gonna go? I didn't want to act like such a DQN, but Remy didn't wait for my consent. She grabbed both my calves and forced my legs to straighten out. I couldn't stop myself from sliding down to the floor. Oh shit. Right as my legs hit the floor, Remy got on top of me. Remy put her index fingers on my lips. She wanted me to stay quiet, evidently. But doing something like this inside a store, as if she read my mind, Remy started giggling.
ここインディーズのコーナーってお客さんあんまり来ないよね。
Oh boy.
こうしてしゃがんだら周りから見えなくなっちゃう。
What was she implying?
ねえタク。
Remy moved her face even closer. Breath stroked my cheeks. It was hot. I couldn't avert my gaze from Remy's shimmering eyes. I could feel myself being sucked right into them. It was like I was under some magic spell. Remy was staring straight at me, just as I was at her. As we stared at each other, Remy's hands began to move. And then she started undoing my blazer, one button at a time.
何を。
Damn, it's getting steamy in the CD section, huh? Paying me no mind, Remy's hand grabbed hold of my tie. With one pull, she unfastened it. Then she began unbuttoning my shirt.
ねえ人が来る。
そ 人が来たらすごくまずいよね。
Despite what she just said, Remy's slender hands continue to move. They artfully slid beneath my shirt and onto my bare chest. Her cool hands slowly glided across my skin. What a bewitching smile. She had always been so cheerful and energetic, never once emitting any kind of sexual vibe or intention, but now, the expression on her face made my heart throb.
タクの胸
That ain't the only thing throbbing.
ドキドキしてる。
Man, Doki Doki indeed.
リミってテラエロス
Terra sexy? Wait. Where the hell does that term come from? Terra sexy. That sounds so fucking familiar.
テラエロス
Oh god, I said that out loud. That alone went to show how shaken I really was.
それってどういう意味かな。教えてよ、タク。
It means you're so unbelievably sexy. Remy's fingers steadily crept along my shirt, and then they traveled down my neck. It tickled. It felt better than anything I ever felt before.
私のこと好きにしたくなってきた。
Following my instincts, I nodded repeatedly.
じゃあここでしちゃおうか。
I couldn't believe my own ears. Do it. Did she mean perhaps sex?
何を
おーい。
Suddenly, I came back to myself. And that was, I then just came back to myself. Remy was waving her hand in front of my face, her eyebrows furrowed in confusion. I wasn't sitting on the floor, and Remy was on top of me. We were just standing there, facing each other, like people normally did.
どうしたの？急に意識がどこかに飛んじゃってたみたいだけど。
なんでもない
I wasn't thinking anything.
落ち着け。
I took a step back from Remy, turned my back to her, and took a deep breath. Holy shit, that'd been the hottest delusion of all time. I was so fucked up, not to mention a self-willing idiot. Couldn't believe I just thought that. Actually, no, forget that. Remy was the one who was talking about giving me something in return. You see that line before an infinite number of H scenes. Any guy who would have even dipped his toes into the genre would have had his imagination go wild over it. Anyway, what was she actually planning to do for me? That was... Oh boy, I have to admit, ooh, that was a steamy fucking scene. Oh my. And if you do actually want to see me actually read eroge, check out my second channel on a different website.
その調子だと話聞いてなかったでしょう。
うん
じゃあもう一回言うけど、
Sorry, I was thinking about stocks.
私のお気に入り CD を貸すっていうので手を打ってくれないかな。ね
は
えねえ、いいでしょ？お願いします。この通り。
あ
Wife was a cool mistress, though I suppose it was my fault for expecting anything. Come to think of it, I wasn't supposed to be into 3D girls at all, yet I had just a delusion about doing that with Remy. Why? Maybe this is what it's called going outside your comfort zone, Takumi. When I agreed to Remy's proposal, she delightfully struck a victory pose. That sight was so amusing to me that despite the critical situation I was in, I couldn't help but laugh. Oh boy, and I think after such a steamy scene like that, I think it's a perfect time to end this episode. Oh god. It really goes to show you that if the writer really wants to, he could easily turn this into a okay. He could so easily. It's so, like, flip of a switch, just like that, it could turn into a okay. Like, you know it's a delusion, but still, it's like, it was pretty good wording, you know? But anyway, if you guys have enjoyed this episode, hit that subscribe button. If you liked it, hit the like button. Want to tell me something? Put it down in the comments below. Check out Discord server or my Twitter. Check description below. And yeah, this has been Voidlego. I'll see you guys next time. See ya!